Hi, everyone. We're super excited to be joining you virtually for our very last Hey Durham lesson. This is just a lot of advice and wrap up, so we hope that you find it useful and hopefully you've enjoyed our curriculum so far. I know we've both enjoyed being with you. And as always, we will have the question box linked. So if you have questions about anything from any previous lessons or this lesson, we are happy to answer them. So first, we'll be doing our college discussion, and we'll be going through a little bit about making the college decision and our decisions.
And just to start out, so there's many options that people have post high school. So you can attend college, participate in a trade or certificate program, enter the military, take a gap year, or even getting a job. And everyone's different. There's no one right option, but just today we're going to go over two of the options, which are going to college and then getting a job later on. So here are some of the things to think about when you're trying to choose a college, if that's what you choose to do after high school. So thinking about finances, like how much is it going to cost to go there? How much debt will you have to go into to attend that college? Location. So is it in a larger city, a smaller city? Is it close to your family? Is it across the country? The area of study that you want to go into. So each college is different, and one college might have a specific program for something, or it might be better. That college might have like a more well-known program in the certain area that you're interested in. And then atmosphere of like how the students interact, like what is the on-campus vibe, and then ranking kind of like what I was talking about, like is it a quote unquote better college, or maybe the specific area that you want to go into is really well known at that college. The types of majors, which is kind of related to area of study, just kind of like a little bit more focused. So kind of like area of study, each college is going to have different majors that you can choose, and then the extracurricular activities that you can do. And this isn't in any order. It's just some things that we are putting out there. So whenever you're trying to choose a college, figure out which of these things is most important to you and then make your decision based on that. I don't know if Courtney has anything else she wants to add to that.
Yeah, I'll just add that everyone's looks different. There's no right order. So my list might look different than Tara's, which will look different than yours. It really is about taking everything into consideration, deciding what is the most important thing to you, and then picking a college based off that. So we'll go through. Tara will talk about her college first.
Yes. So I don't know if I mentioned this at the very beginning, but I'm originally from Oklahoma, but I went to the University of Houston in Texas for undergrad. So there's just a couple of pictures of like a building on campus with our logo, and then our student center on the bottom right. Our mascot was the Cougars, and then on the left is a picture of Houston itself. So I think Houston is like the third or the fourth largest city in the United States, which is very different than what I grew up in a very small town. So it was very different than what I had experienced growing up. And I kind of chose this college, one, for cost. I received a scholarship to go here that made my debt burden very low post college. And then also it had a specific area of study, a specific major for pre-medical students that really interested me. And so that's why I kind of chose this college. I was kind of apprehensive because it was a state away from where I grew up, and I didn't really have any relatives in Houston or Texas. So that was kind of a scary experience, going to college away from my family, especially since I was the first person in my family to kind of move away. It was really fun. And some of the things I did at college was, so in the lower left-hand corner is the Greek letters Chi and Omega. So I was in a sorority. And then I was in a couple other groups, like the American Medical Women's Association, which is like a pre-med organization, and then some student leadership groups for the college. And I was also in the honors college. I think that's pretty much it about my experience.
And I went to school at Vanderbilt University in Nashville, Tennessee. Like Tara, I moved away from my home to go to college. So I grew up in Columbus, Ohio, and I decided on Vanderbilt for a few reasons. First, I decided about the same time that I decided on what college I was going to, that I really wanted to go to medical school. And Vanderbilt is very similar to Duke in that it has a really large academic medical center connected to it. So I thought I would have a lot of really good pre-med opportunities in terms of shadowing and research. So I was really excited about that. It also was very affordable for me. Vanderbilt has one of the best financial aid programs in the country. So it was my least expensive option. And then it also had a lot of extracurricular activities I was really excited about. So like Tara, I was in Greek life. I was in Alpha Chi Omega. I was able to cheer at Vanderbilt, which was awesome. So here's some of our athletic stadiums. I also did Camp Kesem, which some of you may know is a camp for children who are affected by parents' cancers. And I thought that was a really cool opportunity, and I loved camp growing up in a super interesting population that I knew I wanted to work with. And here's a picture of Nashville. It is a great city to be in. Here is a picture of Vanderbilt's campus, and then this is Mr. C, our mascot.
And then I'll also add, I forgot to say this, but also as a pre-medical student, Houston has a really large medical center as well. So that was one of the things that I was kind of looking into, and then plays into the whole location part that we were talking about earlier. So the next couple of slides is just kind of advice from us to you. So feel free to take it with a grain of salt. Obviously, we're not experts. This is just from like what we've learned from our own experience. So a couple of the things that I wanted to share was just don't underestimate the burden of debt. So like one college might seem like a really good idea, but if you have to pay a lot of money or take out a lot of loans to go there when you could get maybe a similar education at a less expensive college, it might not seem like a big deal right now, but like once you graduate and then you have to get a job and then you have to like start paying for all of these things, also having to repay student loans at that point, it will be a lot of added stress onto that. And so the more debt that you have, like the more that you have to pay back later and the more stress that kind of adds on you. So just kind of keep that in mind when you're looking at colleges, and then make sure the decision is yours. So it's always helpful to get people's advice on maybe like what they did or stuff like that. But you want to make sure that the college that you choose is your decision, because you're the one that's going to be going there, and like it's your education, it's your life. So just make sure that you're doing what you want with it. And then also always remember the reason that you're there. So it's always great to get involved with extracurricular activities and like have fun and make friends and stuff like that. But you remember that you're there to get an education. So just don't let other things cloud that. And then don't overwhelm yourself. This was something that I definitely did. I got to college and saw that there was like so many things to do versus my like high school, especially because it was smaller. And so like I joined a bunch of clubs, and then all of a sudden I was like, oh, now I'm in everything and I'm like really overwhelmed with my schoolwork and everything. So it's great to explore, but just don't overwhelm yourself.
Yeah, and some of these, what I'm going to say maybe seems a little contradictory to what Tara is saying, but they all go together. It's all about balance and balancing all of your extracurricular activities and your experiences outside of class with your education and your in-class activities. And I think college is a really awesome time. It's a really fun time, and you can learn a lot in class and outside of class through your extracurriculars and the people that you meet. So have fun and take advantage of every opportunity you can, whether that is extracurricular or in your class. So if you have the opportunity to study abroad, go study abroad. If you can join a new club or take up a new skill, do that. For one of my electives, I was able to take ceramics, and it was awesome. And I will probably never use it again, but I had so much fun with it. And it is stressful at times, but remember to make sure that you're having fun. And similarly, try new things and step outside of your comfort zone. College is a time of growth. Really, no matter what you're doing after high school, it's a very different structure than what you did inside. So it's a fantastic opportunity to learn and grow. And for a lot of people, it's the first time that they're away from their parents, which I think also really contributed to my growth. And I would say with most decisions that you're making in life, there are a lot of right options. It's not that there's one perfect school for you. There are a lot of schools that you could have a really fantastic and great time at. I think with every college I was looking at, I could have gone there and had the best time of my life and learned everything I needed to learn. And Vanderbilt was ultimately the school I decided on. But if I had gone to another school, I think I would say the same fantastic things about that university.
And then for roommate advice, if you're going to be living with a roommate, so the number one thing I think, in my opinion, is just pick someone that you're compatible with. I know it might seem like a great idea, like if you and your best friend are going to the same college to room together, but that might be a problem if you like to go to bed at, like, let's say midnight, and but your roommate loves to stay up until 3 a.m. and study. So that probably won't go over well. Or like you're really clean and your roommate maybe doesn't clean all that often. So it's better to pick someone that you're able to live with comfortably rather than someone you're friends with. Um, Not saying that you can't live with your friends, but just make sure that you're compatible. And then you don't have to be best friends with your roommate. I feel like that's kind of like the idea that everyone thinks, like, you go to college, you get a roommate and they're going to be your best friend forever. And if they are, that's great. I lived with the same person all 4 years of college and we're still really good friends. But I've had other roommates where we can just live together, but we don't have to be best friends. So that's okay too.
Yeah, I will echo what Tara said about compatibility. I remember one of the questions they asked us for matching us with roommates was, do you think that your room is for socializing or for studying? Because if Tara and I are roommates and I think it's fun to hang out with people in the room and that's what I want to do, and she's trying to study, that is not going to go over well. And also echo what she said about best friends. It's really more important that you're compatible and you get along and are cordial and friendly than that it's your very best friend. I lived with um, 3 different people in undergrad and we all got along well. But it's also okay if you need to switch roommates. Sometimes pairings do not go well for whatever reason. Most universities have a process for that. You'll have an RA or a resident advisor or an upperclassman in your dorm who will be able to help facilitate that. And if that's what you need to do to live well and be successful, that's what you need to do. You're going to spend a lot of time in your living situation. So if it's not the right one for you, don't be afraid to ask for help.
So for time management, this is something that I still struggle to do to this day, is just to make time to take care of yourself. Like college can be extremely busy, whether you're just doing school stuff or you're like adding in a bunch of extracurricular stuff. But it is really important to just take time to take care of yourself. And that isn't always in the form of like doing face masks. It could be just taking time to like clean your apartment or something. And then blocking out time each week to do things can be helpful. Like I said, like if you say every Saturday, I'm going to clean the apartment. I think that'll go a long way, and it'll help kind of like things not build up to where it gets to be too much.
Yeah, I think those are great pieces of advice. I think time management is so important in college because you're coming a lot of times from high school where your day is scheduled. You're in class from 8 to 3, and then you have practice 3 to 5:30, and then you go home and do your homework and eat, and you kind of do the same thing every day. And in college, you are most of the time able to schedule your classes. So you might only have class in the morning or only 3 mornings and 2 afternoons a week, or school for 4 hours of the day, but you have to do a lot more schoolwork outside of class. So I feel like this is something that is really a key to success. But like Tara said, I'm still working on this as well. My 2 tips are to prioritize and make sure you are doing the most urgent and important thing. Sometimes things seem urgent, but they are not actually important, and there are a lot more important and urgent things on top of that. And make sure that you're looking ahead. So it's great to just get all the things you need to do today, but are you looking ahead to, the projects that you have next week, that you have deadlines for, that you need to meet with the advisor for, that you need to, find 10 references for. So really making sure that you're like looking at the things for today as well as far in advance.
I will say, I didn't put this on there, but I just kind of remembered it. 8 a.m. classes are never a good idea. I know you think like, oh, you get up early for high school and you can do it, but trust me, when you get there, you won't enjoy it. So just do yourself a favor.
Do not take 8 a.m. classes. And I think also figure out, do I like my classes in the morning or do I like them in the afternoon? For me, I like to stay up late and studying. I would rather stay up late than wake up early. So the 8 and 9 a.m. classes were not for me, but I also hated having class until 4 p.m. So I took a lot of the midday classes. And I also knew from my high school experience, sometimes I would have half days where I only had to go to work, only had to go to school in the morning or the afternoon. And I knew I always got a lot more done if I got things done earlier in the day. But figure that out as soon as you can, because you don't need to wake up at 7:30 for an 8 a.m. class if you like to stay up late studying instead of waking up early to study.
And then talking about studying, going over some studying tips. So, um, whatever you did in high school to study is probably not going to work for you in college. It's just like it's a drastically different thing. So my advice is to experiment with different study strategies to find what works for you. And it's totally okay if you try something and then it doesn't work the first time. What works for me is probably not going to work for Courtney because we're just different people. And then always encourage people to utilize on-campus resources like tutoring or like the career center or stuff like that, the writing center. Most of the time, I think those things are offered to you for free, or like you pay for them in the fees that you pay with your tuition. So you might as well use them. And then this one, you don't have to do this, but I recommend finding a couple of like go-to study spots that are not in your home, dorm, wherever you live, just because sometimes studying, you might have like too many distractions where you live, or you just like might not be able to focus. So it's always good to have like a couple spots. I love to go like to the library on my campus or a couple of coffee shops.
Yeah, universities have a ton of resources available to you, both for studying and career planning and all of that, and you should take advantage of all of them that you need. Um, my advice is to study a little bit every day instead of cramming. If you need to memorize a pathway, write it out a few times every morning instead of writing it out 15 times the night before the exam and hoping that it will stick. And also review your notes before the next class. So my classes were pretty much either Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Tuesday, Thursday. So I had some time between classes, and a lot of times I would kind of forget what we talked about on Monday if I didn't look at something before Wednesday. And I'll also echo what Tara said. I think when I came to Vanderbilt, I realized I had never really learned how to study, and the study strategies that I used in high school were not sufficient. So most people will have to find something new and just keep playing around until you find something that works. And it might be different for your science class than your English class, and that's okay. Just keep experimenting and ask other people for help. That's something we do a lot in med school. Is the upperclassmen will tell us, this is how I studied for this course and this is how I studied for that course. So find people who are upperclassmen in your major and say, okay, how did you study for this set of courses and how was that different from your other courses?
And then just some general life tips. And I know we're not too much older than all of you. So like I said, just kind of take this with a grain of salt. It's from our own experience. So I just want to emphasize that everyone's journey is different. So kind of like we talked about, like not everyone goes to college, like there's many things that people can do. Even if you're like in a group of people and you all go to college, some of you might graduate in 4 years, some might graduate in 5, and some might take longer. Life is not a race. So you can do things at your own pace. No one's judging you. And so it's just, yeah, everyone's journey is going to be different. So don't stress too much if you're not like, you don't fit like the cookie cutter mold of what people expect. And then also kind of like what I talked about earlier with choosing a college, it's like you are the master of your life. So like I said, it's always good to get advice from people, especially people that have like been in the situation that you're in before, but also just make sure that whatever decisions you make or whatever you decide to do is ultimately your decision, because it is your life and you'll have to live with whatever like the consequences of certain decisions might be.
Yeah, I absolutely love that advice, especially everyone's journey is different. Comparison really is the thief of joy. So Focus on yourself and what makes you happy and how you define your success. I would say don't sell yourself short. A lot of times we're limited by the limitations we put on ourselves. I think it would have been really easy for me to say, no one in my family has ever gone to medical school, so why should I? Or none of my neighbors have gone to medical school or are physicians, so why should I do that? But you don't have to put those limits on yourself. Dream big and work hard, and the rest will work itself out. Also, research your plans and ask other people for advice. I absolutely love to ask people for advice, and I solicit a lot of advice from people, because if you think it's absolutely the worst advice you've ever had, you don't have to take it, and you've really only wasted like a few minutes of your time asking for that advice. So ask a lot of people what they did and kind of take the bits and pieces that work for you. And then find something that excites you. I think a lot of people will try to be cool and say that nothing is exciting, but that's actually super sad if you cannot find anything exciting. So do something that you love and something that brings you joy. And I think it's always better to do something that is exciting to you than something that you think will look good on your resume. Because then if someone, first you'll be miserable if it doesn't excite you, and you're just doing it because you think the line will look good. But then if someone asks you about that, you'll have a lot more to say if it was something that you actually enjoyed doing and you were invested in, than something you were just doing because you thought other people would be impressed by it. And no matter what you do, you can always find some life wisdom and life tips from that. When Tara and I were talking about why we chose our colleges, we both mentioned things that had nothing to do with our careers as future physicians, but I know that we both took good lessons from those that we will carry into our future careers.
Okay, and then now we're just going to talk a little bit about budgeting. And this is something that you can do no matter what you do after high school. And I'm sure even some of you now are budgeting. So why would someone keep a budget? So a couple of reasons. So it'll make sure you always have enough money for the things that you need, whether that's like groceries or like paying rent or stuff like that, car payments. And it ensures you don't spend money that you don't have, like you're not making unnecessary purchases. It helps you achieve a savings goal for the things you want to buy that are important to you. So like if you're saving up to buy a car or you're saving up to do anything, or maybe you just want to get like an Xbox or something, that's your goal. So it can help you do that and keeps you prepared for emergencies. So like if something happens, like your car breaks down, that you have money stowed away for that, and then cuts down on financial stress. So that one's just kind of self-explanatory. And so here are just some options on ways to keep a budget. So you can use an Excel sheet. And this is actually what I do. I just find it really easy that it's all in like a table format already. And then you can use like the functions like adding and averaging and stuff like that. You could also use Google Docs, or there are websites and companies, but you have to make sure that they're reputable. If they're asking for banking information, such as Mint. And this is just kind of like an example of a budget in the lower right-hand corner.
Yeah, I also use an Excel sheet, and I find it really easy. And I would say one thing is, you can put in like entertainment or fun things into your budget as long as you're planning for them. If you're only ever like buying groceries and gas, like you'll be tempted to spend money on other things. So plan those in and stay within budget. I also have used the Mint app. It's like an app on your phone, and it will kind of categorize things for you, and you can set the budget. So I like my Excel sheet better just because I'm like totally in control of it, but lots of great options out there.
And I'll just say, in addition to that, like kind of like we were talking about earlier, everyone's different. So everyone's budget is going to be different, like how they budget.
So next we'll be talking about getting a job. So all of you will most likely use this at some point, whether it is getting a job while you're in college, after college, or even right out of high school. So think about what you're interested in and be honest with yourself. During or right out of high school, you probably won't be able to be too picky, just because you have a limited skill set, most likely. I also say that most people's first job is not their dream job, because you don't have the qualifications for your dream job most of the time. Google can be a good place to get ideas. Use your connections, and there's nothing wrong with going into a business and asking if they're hiring. The worst thing that they're going to say is no, sorry. In terms of using connections, for a lot of times, like kind of felt uncomfortable doing this, but it is actually so helpful. If you know someone's parent or your neighbor or someone from your church or school who does something that you're interested in, it never hurts to ask, because even if they don't have a position or they can't get you where you want to go, they'll probably give you some advice or be able to point you in the right direction. And then write a resume and a cover letter if appropriate. So this is an example of a resume. So you usually have your qualifications, education, any honors, work history, and community service. There are a ton of templates out there, and most colleges and universities will do resume workshops and have templates online. So lots of great free resources. And then ask someone to proofread it for you, even if they are not going into that field or they're your age or something like that. Like, it's always good to have someone else have another set of eyes on it, and they might be able to help with your wording to make it even more powerful.
And I'll add in really quick before I continue. It's kind of good just to have a resume or a CV like as now, because um, a lot of things will ask for one of those, even if it's not applying for a job. Like I know in college, like applying for leadership positions or scholarships, you had to give them your resume or just kind of like a list of what you're involved in. So after you give someone your beautifully made resume, it's always good to follow up with a phone call a few days later. And this is especially helpful for maybe if like someone's kind of like really busy and they just haven't had a chance to reach out to you yet. And I think they really appreciate the initiative of you calling just to check in. And then if you hear back from an employer, like before you call them, make sure to respond as soon as possible. I think like the general professional rule is like responding to messages within, I think 48 hours, but I mean, if you can make it in 24 hours, I think that would be even better. Kind of just shows them that you're really excited for this position and you'd really want this position. And then if you get an interview, be completely honest and focus on demonstrating that you're hardworking and willing to learn. Don't say things that you think they want to hear. Just kind of, they're trying to get to know you as a person and an applicant. So just be honest. And then getting a job when you're young can be really hard. So don't get frustrated if you hear no a lot before something finally works out.
Yeah. And I will add to Tara's point about having a resume and letter. I completely agree. Even if you're just asking someone for a letter of recommendation or that sort of thing, a lot of times they'll want your resume so they can pull things from that. For the interview, you can find a lot of really great interview questions online. So you can do some prep work so that way you are more prepared for the questions that someone may be asking. You can also do a lot of research and find things out about the company, and then you can ask your own questions. So that way it will show you're really interested and you can make sure that the job is a good fit for you. You'll definitely hear a lot of no's. I think I mentioned this before, but I worked for a year between undergrad and med school. And even with some more experience in my degree and all of that, I still got a lot of no's. So this is a sample resume. So typical headings will include education, volunteer experience, prior work experience, leadership, awards, honors, and volunteering. And depending on your major, you may change your resume to a CV. There are tons of examples of this online. So I've actually done a CV a few times. It's very similar to a resume, but resumes should typically be under 1 page, and CVs do not have a length cap. And you put more about your research experience, your relevant coursework, and then any publications and presentations that you do.
And don't feel like you're obligated to put something under each of these headings in your resume. If you don't have any prior work experience, that's totally okay. And so then how to have a good handshake. So we're not doing a whole lot of handshakes right now due to the ongoing pandemic, but maybe we'll get back there one day. A good handshake is a really good way to kind of like, well, it's a good introduction to someone, especially if you're like interviewing for a position. So depending on the situation, introduce yourself or greet the other person when you initiate, but always be aware that like maybe due to cultural differences or personal preferences, people might not want to do handshakes. So just kind of like be aware of that. But if you are going to give someone a handshake and they also would like to give you a handshake, you stand up and look at them in the eye. get the hand position right. Not sure what that means, but I mean, we all know what that means. Just kind of like put your hand out. And then you want to make sure the handshake is firm, but that you're not like squeezing their hand too tight. But you also don't want to just kind of like lightly grasp either. And I guess 2 to 5 seconds is the appropriate length for a good handshake. And then practice. And then sanitize your hands after you practice.
Yeah, I would say practicing does make a difference. I remember when I heard that, my sisters and I would like practice, but not really practice. But I used to interview for some undergrad student positions when I was an undergrad, and you can definitely tell like people who were comfortable giving handshakes and people who are not. And so it really does make a difference. And this is a part of your first impression. So the first thing that people will notice about you is how you dress, how you talk, and how you greet them. And that really can color the rest of your experience. So having the best introduction you can, making sure that you are greeting someone properly, like calling them Mr. and Mrs. or Dr., Miss, whatever, and having a good handshake. So that way they have a good opinion of you going into the rest of the interview.
And then kind of at this point, I know we're not doing this live, but this is a good opportunity if there's any current seniors in the class to kind of take a second and give any advice they might have to underclassmen. Obviously, like you've been through high school, you're almost finished. So do you have any advice that can help other people make it through?
Yes, you guys can pause there and hopefully have some words of wisdom to share.
And then there's also a Kahoot game that we can play. We'll send the link to Coach Green, and hopefully she can go over that with everyone.
And then lastly, this is the QR code for the question box. If you have any questions about anything we've said today, any other lessons, you can go ahead and ask it. But we would like everyone to scan this because we'd like some feedback. So take a second to open that up. And then we'd like to know, what is your favorite session? What was your least favorite session? What did we not cover that you wish we had spent time on? Out of the things we did cover, which topics were not as useful? If you were in charge of planning the sessions for next year, what would you do differently? And what will you take away from this experience? So I'll leave this on for another minute, then I'm going to go back to the QR code and then come back to the question box. You guys can also pause and rewind so that way you can all make sure you get it. So again, here is the QR code. Please do click on it so that way we can get this and we can make Hey Durham even better for next year. And here are the questions again.
That's it. We don't have anything else besides that. And like Courtney mentioned at the beginning, this is our last session, kind of the wrap up session. So I just kind of want to say thank you for letting us be a part of this experience with you. I know I had a lot of fun. I bet Courtney had a lot of fun as well. And I hope all of you had a lot of fun. I'm really sorry we couldn't do these last couple of sessions live, but you know, we make do with the situations that we're dealt with. But yeah.
Yes, we wish everyone the very best with your future. And if you have questions, let us know in the question box.